um, how the signal is propagating. We just want to be live on all different streams, so Twitch, YouTube, DLive, Periscope. Okay, apparently we're all green apart from Twitch, which should be on in a few seconds. There we go. Apparently, yes, we are. Cool. Hello and welcome to another session of Proto. Today we are going to be looking at basically a fundamentals of DAOs, or otherwise known as decentralized autonomous organizations. I don't know whether you can hear that, but some alarm or some kind has gone off. I think it's a fire alarm. But hopefully that's not too distracting if you can indeed hear it. But yeah, so welcome to Proto. Here we look at sort of basically first principle stuff, right? But specifically to do with the awesome superpowers that crypto unlocks, right? I like to sort of say that crypto unlocks three superpowers in terms of just rethinking introducing a paradigm shift. The first one is communications, the second one is collaboration, and the third is compensation. And obviously, if you think of those three things, they actually really beautifully interrelate. Our ability to actually securely communicate, and then on top of that, once we communicate, we're then able to say, okay, hey, how about we collaborate? And then obviously at the end of the day, people need, whether it's monetary compensation or some sort of recognition, right? Which is specific to their actions and the contributions through incentive design. So yeah, that's the awesome stuff that crypto enables. That's what we look at here on Proto from a first principles perspective. As I said, today we're going to be looking at decentralized autonomous organizations, looking at the fundamentals of those, and we're going to be joined by two awesome frequent collaborators from Gimbal Labs, James and Roberto. And yeah, we're just going to be breaking down some, having some kind of high level conversations, and trying to find out why is it so far into crypto, give or take 3 or 4 years in, decentralized autonomous organizations have not really taken off. But anyway, that's enough of me waffling on. Let's actually get our two awesome guests on. Hello, James. Hello, Roberto. Do you guys want to just quickly introduce yourself, like in 30 seconds or something, just to give some context?
My name is James. I'm from Gimbal Labs, and I'm excited to learn about DAOs together today.
Awesome,
I'm,
Roberto.
I'm Roberto. I'm a colleague of James on Gimbal Labs. We're here to try and discover what's a DAO model that works for us.
Awesome. James, do you want to actually just quickly give us some idea of what Gimbal Labs is?
Certainly. So Gimbal Labs came out of Cardano's project Catalyst. We met each other by participating, Roberto and I and our third co-founder, Julie. We live in different places. I'm on the East Coast of the United States. Roberto's in southern Spain, and Julie's on the west side of Germany. And so to your point about collaboration and communication, it has been just a. I'm not even going to try to figure out what adjective to use to describe the journey, right?
Yeah.
We've really been enjoying this journey of learning together. We were one of the recipients of funds from this first official funding round of Project Catalyst. And one thing that I really do take a lot of pride in is we were a project that represents two different projects coming together and beginning to create something that's bigger than its initial ideas. And what I hope for the future of Catalyst is to continue to see that happening. And the good news is across Fund 3, it does seem like there's some other examples of people coming together in new and unique ways. So Gimbal Labs, we are focused on education and adoption of Cardano. We do this by creating accessible entry points for people who are brand new to blockchain and Cardano, and also to developers who want to start building with these brand new tools. So Roberto leads the technical side of our project and creates all sorts of excellent endpoints that people can start to tinker with without going through all of the steps that it takes to begin to build.
Awesome. So actually, yeah, let's just jump right in. Give me a moment to disable that. Okie dokie. Let's actually bring up the shared document. So this particular document is actually in the description for those of you who wanna come along or poke around inside of it. It's a relatively new document, or this specific page. The document as a whole is a Proto one, and there are a number of pages that go into different projects, from tokens to DIDs, etc. So the DAO is one of the pages on here, which is, as I said, relatively new. Yeah, so at the moment we've got a few folks who are actually collaborating on it, but yeah, the idea is for it to actually grow. So every now and then you'll see cursors coming on with different names that will basically just be the different people. At the moment, I don't know whether you can be able to actually. Oh yeah, you can be able to see. Yeah, so that one's me because I'm sharing my screen, and you'll probably see James's and Roberto's coming on. There we go. That's James's, and Roberto will probably pop up at some point soon. So yeah, the idea is co-creation, right? And yeah, there we are. There's Roberto. Yeah, as I said, so the link is in the description for those of you who want to follow on, whether it's now live or later on in the recording. This is the document which is going to keep on evolving, and as we come back to this idea of DAOs in the future, because the idea with Proto is we start things from the very beginning, and then sort of revisit them and basically sort of layer it on as we sort of go in that way. Right, so now let's actually just jump into it and have a conversation about break down the nature of the three words, I suppose: decentralized, autonomous, and organization. Right, so one of the things I like just about this particular, and it goes by, I think, other other names as well. I think just autonomous organization. Some people drop out the decentralized bit. But one thing that I do like about this, and I'll be interested to just sort of hear your general thoughts about DAOs. What I like about it is the fact that the organization is last, right? Because in a way, that's kind of like the tenuous link, right? And then having the decentralized and the autonomous actually precede that, to me, gives a sense of importance to having decentralization be quite key, and then the autonomy bit, right? Because to me, one of the problems that DAOs solve is the bottleneck which happens when people collaborate, right? Whenever people collaborate, there's a whole bunch of bottlenecks, from an information sharing standpoint, to a time management standpoint, to even just a simple like social standpoint, right? Where you have these tensions of people who are trying to collaborate, but feel an awkwardness, in terms of not wanting to offend another person, or not wanting to change their work, or stuff like that. So the fact that autonomous, from my perspective at least, takes precedence over the organization. Because when I think of organization, I think of hierarchy. I think of of the whole taking precedence over the individual, right? What I like about this is that it flips it around, and it liberates the individual, and then in that kind of tenuous link where there's usually a bottleneck, it looks to optimize, for that to be the least of an issue, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I was thinking while you were talking about how the hierarchies of legacy institutions protect us from some of those social awkward things that you're talking about, right? If I have a hierarchy to rely on, you know, I'm going to talk down to the people below me and tell them what I think about everything. But, oh, nope, I'm going to stay away from those issues of those people above me, right? It allows for that kind of passing on the responsibility of learning how to really on your own your own thoughts, right? And contribute to a collaborative environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow it breaks the bottom-up approach that it's inherent to, or at least to me, it's inherent to the decentralized um, movement. Which, yeah, if we go and set up rigid rules, will cap the way of people take ownership of things,
Mm.
like and then you cannot be autonomous in every aspect you might want to be. That Yeah, that's being those rules enforced by a smart contract, or just organization rules. It makes the whole thing rigid. That's why I like the holocracy way
Model.
of thinking of this, because somehow you just get inspired by some models of thinking, and then just start replicating it, like in open source projects, where you just clone things and start uh, running your own business in an autonomous way. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no, yeah, it does. I feel like to add on to that, like, well, yeah, the number of things. So I feel like one thing that came to mind was your communicating that point was the importance for us not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Well, I suppose the point that Roberta just made, but also the one that James just made about hierarchy, um, and and as well, you know, the one to do with holacracy, right? Because I feel like whenever we are frustrated and try to solve a problem, humans have this odd thing where, you know, we tend to kind of jump to the opposite side, right? Going from in a way being having systems which are too constrained to, you know, having ones which are, you know, way too loose, so to speak. So I feel like one thing that in having all these conversations, we need to understand, okay, what worked in the legacy sort of analog world, and, you know, what can we borrow from that, right? What are the situations where the red tape in that situation, in those situations, actually introduce this kind of slowness, this limbic or reptilian brain type functionality that is important. You know, and then how does that then, you know, interact with the cortex, you know, the sort of the faster thinking, more creative side of things. And just to quickly tie it back to my experience of Catalyst so far, in the 2 rounds that we've seen, humans again have this tendency, this kind of emotional tendency to kind of to be emotional, I suppose. And an analogy which I found, which I think is quite fitting, that I found people within Catalyst, at least, and maybe even crypto in general, is they tend to look at crypto as a silver bullet, that the technology itself will solve the problem, right? And not understand that us as there's a huge part that there's a huge social part that factors in, right? And much like whenever people get into relationships, they, just on the basis of like, oh, this person is talking to me and they're interested in me. Now I'm going to superimpose all my thoughts of the perfect partner onto this person, and then, obviously be disappointed. So I feel like there's something sort of analogous or analogous to crypto with this particular thing, and particularly to do with NFTs. As I've been going through the Fund Three, the Fund Three proposals, this thing has sort of risen up where people are like, yeah, NFTs this and NFTs that, and it's like, yeah, maybe not, but yeah. Okay.
Two three-letter acronyms. It's all going to be DAOs and NFTs, right? It's going to be everything.
Exactly. All right. Cool. Now,
can I just add to that?
Yeah, sure.
Point, this for months, the phrase "grab a shovel" has been going around the Cardano community. I love that phrase because shovels don't do anything on their own. Shovels need somebody to grab them, right?
Yeah.
In the very same way. Yes, we have unbelievable tools at our disposals now, but there's a chance that none of us use them. None of us use them how they're meant to be built, right? We've got some moon talk here in the YouTube comments. I love it. It's that if that's bringing people to the ecosystem, great. And Jenish, if you're still there, let's go. Come. Let's go do something with this stuff now, right? We have tools, but it's up to us to use them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Okay, so now if we let's get into one thing here that I feel, can I build my own shovel? Indeed, yes, Kyle Johns.
Are you not? Yeah, he's doing it.
Build your own shovel. But actually, to expand on that particular point that you just made there, James, as someone, my interests are quite in Minecraft, are quite diverse. So like farming, is one of my interests, and so to you, the shovel obviously is a farm tool for the most part, or yeah. And so now getting to a point where we're having things like autonomous tractors, right, or tilling machines, to think that, oh, that takes care of yeah, Quasar, what's going on with the Twitch comments? They should be coming through on my end. Yeah, let me know if there's some sort of an issue. Yeah, so yeah, with tractors, right? If you just get a tractor and say, oh, this thing is actually intelligent, it's got sensors, it can be able to go away and not just till the land, but also like plant, seedlings. One would be wrong to just make the assumption, hey, Tave, was that Tev or that's all? Okay, no, it's you. One would be remiss not to point out that to just think that, oh, the role of the farmer, right, with them knowing, just the weather patterns and the the nature of the soil and just all that knowledge, to think that that's now like worthless, I think is very much hello tractor indeed. Yeah, so now let's actually move on to have a conversation about this breakdown, right, of communication, collaboration, compensation. What's your opinion, guys, on this particular breakdown in the current state?
Oh, I think we lost you for a couple of seconds.
Oh, did you? Oh, snap. Wait, why is my signal so low? Which is weird. Okay, sorry. Which point did I cut out?
You were saying something about Starlink and how you were picking up a satellite.
Oh, Joker. Yeah. So okay, I'll just quickly go back on myself here. Yeah. So the nature of decentralized autonomous organizations, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, it can be, or at least crypto in general, it breaks down in terms of communication, collaboration, compensation. and this very much sort of takes the form, or takes that same kind of triangle of complementary aspects, right, into the DAO, right? So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective, whether you consider something like Bitcoin itself a DAO, or something like Aragon a DAO, like what is the nature of, in a way, those three things, like communication, collaboration, compensation? Like, is there a place where all three are like really well executed, or are we leaning a lot more on one and weaker on the others?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's
Hey,
challenging
Teva.
to break it down that way. Um, Roberto, I mean, I'm curious to hear from you which tools you really look to.
Um, I'm not following Aragon since a long time ago. Uh, Also, I'm not the most illustrated person on Bitcoin community, but I feel that, for example, from the from
Oh no. We appear to have lost Roberto. He did say that he's having some local connectivity issues. For some reason, my bars seem to be showing yellow, which is like moderate signal, but I am on, really good wired connection, so that's just really odd. But yeah, so yeah, go ahead, James. I'll put you on the spot.
Sure. No. Okay. So yeah, I don't have clear thoughts about this yet. But I guess I have more questions, right? So,
Go for it.
um, I am optimistic that we're moving in the right direction on the collaboration front. Compensation, I know that we're not there yet, right? This we're not going to support the blockchain space just by watching tokens appreciate in value forever, right? Someday they're going to stabilize. And at that point, will people be able to make a living? And I hope we're already working on that right now to prepare for that day where we say, okay, now we have these established tools. We have a better idea of what they're worth and how they appreciate in value over the long term. And we can all be building on them. There need to be compensation systems that make it possible for people to show up, do honest work, and make an honest living for that. On the pathway to that, I come back to probably the communication part first. You and I have done a lot of talking about synchronous and asynchronous conversations, communication. There's, I don't know about everybody else, but within the Cardano community, a lot of us have been kind of grinding for months, years in some cases at this point. And it's not sustainable forever. It's incredibly exciting right now, but hey, how are your sleep habits right now? You know,
Dude,
so
dude.
we can't do this forever. And so the outcome that I want to see is that we get the communication systems right in a way that maximizes trust among each other, that maximizes our ability to say, hey, you're making good, honest contributions to goals that we all share. And that's enough, right? We don't need to be on communication channels 24/7, right? We don't need to be. We should be creating communication systems where work speaks for itself, and people can do the right amount of work for their life and the lifestyle they want. And so, yeah, I know that's kind of a lot to put on the back of communication, but as somebody, communication was a big part of my the last 5 years of my life. The organizations I've been working within, communication has been the first thing that made things unsustainable. If you feel like, oh, I have to spend hours each day making sure I'm caught up on Slack,
Mm-hmm.
real work doesn't happen,
Happen.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how can we, but without Slack, how do you build trust, right? Without having that. So I guess that's my question is how do you create communication systems to maximize trust so that people can do great work that actually changes the world?
Quasar very
Agree.
much agrees with what you just said. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a number of things come to mind. Where is it? Where's Quasar? Quasar. Okay. Where is it? Is it there? Okay. Yeah. A number of things come to mind from what you just said, right? The first one is actually we ought to be thinking about governance as part of the communication part, right? Which is why I just quickly added it on there. And then the other thing that comes to mind, there we go. Quasar says, "Dang right." Um, okay, wait. Tevo makes a point here, which we'll come to in a moment. Well, let me just hide that thing. Yeah, the thing that I wanted to actually add on to that was the point which you made previously, which I think is a very important point to actually come back to now, right? A bunch of us here at the moment are from the Cardano community, right? And obviously, Cast is gonna be crypto centric, not Cardano centric. But for the moment, it's majority Cardano, and obviously Cardano has over the last few days, the price has actually been really appreciating. And to James's point, what's happening right now is the market is finally factoring in the actual the inherent value of the network and the community to a certain extent. Like we are not like the current price, I would argue, is not factoring in future value, right? The products and the services which are going to be built on top of this, as James actually pointed out. So I feel like that's important to actually understand, right? So grabbing shovels, like, this is a time, right? Because once the base value will sort of be locked in, whether that will be at $1 or $10 or whatever, like, we need something more, right? And that's why this stuff is super super important. Now, coming back to this idea of communication as a bottleneck, one, I've got a whole bunch of Slack for it. Slack as in, like, sh1t for it, not the app, for how I chose to design my server, right? The way I chose to design the cast server, it's very quite unconventional, right? But the point there is to actually keep it focused. One of the things I do not like about Discord servers, and very much Telegram, which is why I left, right? And Slack as well. I left both of those. But on Discord, there's opportunity to actually, like, they're the tools to be able to actually, like, streamline the communication and just the interactions. And so I leverage that, right? I hate going onto servers where there's, like, so many different channels, right? And it's so difficult to just be up to date. So, which is why I sort of kept it really super super tight. But that's still not the problem is still not solved, right? This idea of valuing people's time and keeping them really well informed is something which I think we're going to carry on grappling with for quite some time now. And but then once we get somewhere with that, and I feel like crypto is really well positioned to do that. Once we get somewhere with that, I feel like that would really be a value for the ecosystem as a whole, because in typical open source nature, it's going to be available to every other project. Yeah, so Roberto, before you dropped out, you were saying something. Do you remember what you were saying?
Uh, yeah, I was
Yeah, the
thinking
Bitcoin community. You're not well
the
versed in it.
Bitcoin project community. I'm not sure if the compensation is a piece of this triangle that it's solved somehow. But I think communication and collaboration, it's working well because it's like in any other open source project, just because the nature of building open source, where you actually need to, yeah, put a bunch of different people from different places and agree on pull requests and stuff. Aragon, I think that tries to well, all the Aragon framework, although I'm not again up to date to what they are doing today, but I think that they are trying to build a framework of smart contracts that actually automates some compensation for uh, the corporation. Um, but again, I think that it's um, it's not a matter of automating compensation based on metrics. I don't think metrics it's a good uh, base for a meritocracy uh, system. I think, as James referred, that we need to find a system of communication that allows us to cooperate or collaborate without being stick to Slack 24 hours, and that at the same time generate some, not metrics but maybe indicators that allows us to compensate people for their their pursuit of the goal of the DAO or whatever it is. So that needs to be part of building a web of trust in a natural way that we do in real life when you deal with people, and if they don't fail to you, you they gain your your trust. How we do it online, it's a bit more risky, not and difficult, I suppose. Um, yeah, back to the communication, and I like how you're trying to solve our legacy habits, by setting up your Discord well like you do.
Yeah.
I also think that we are missing the asynchronous communication. I mean, plenty of open source projects were built on a mix of uh, IRC, Internet Relay Chat, where you go and have synchronous communications. That's important. Like now we are having a video call, and it's important to have these high bandwidth communications, but also some stuff needs to be put on an asynchronous way. Slack is not good for that, even though you are supposed to answer to threads whenever you are able, and that it becomes tricky to handle that. Um, yeah, I think we are abandoning email these days, and it's a great tool. It's an awesome tool to make commitments and have stuff that it's not that prior top priority. Um, and yeah, that's what I think about communication that allows us to collaborate and maybe find some indicators to compensate.
Yeah. 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 Coming back to the point that you made about Bitcoin, I feel like there's a rich conversation to be had there regarding like consensus incent consensus slash network design from a sort of incentive standpoint, because in many ways what Bitcoin is basically the transfer of all the energy that it takes computationally, right, is then transferred into the Bitcoin that you get. And then, the whole sort of market price discovery happens in that way where, the miner then, it gets X amount, and, that then correlates to how much they had to spend to, to actually get that, right? So it's, but then at the same time, like, from an incentive design standpoint, one thing that we need to really be aware of is sustainability, right? As we touched on there, in the context of, I think we spoke about sustainability from the context of communication, right? Because James was saying, coming back and, all the work that people are putting in right now within the community, it's not really sustainable to carry on giving, that amount of energy and time. I think sustainability in terms of incentives design is super important, because I feel like there's some, yeah, like proof of work, unsustainable stuff, and this is not, the tree hugger in me, complaining about Bitcoin. It's just like it's fundamentally, it's going to get to a point where, the rich just become richer, and like, we're going to get to a point, from my perspective, where basically the Binances of this world and the Coinbases are the ones who are going to be uh mining, right? All the other miners are going to basically be pushed out, so exchanges are then going to take that position, and then there's going to be this whole thing with institutions being majority, and a whole bunch of conversations about, does one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, if it's then if it's not fungible, right? If addresses and basically people can then be blacklisted. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of rich stuff that, we I think need to look into, not just on a micro level, like, like Bitcoin, the network, and Cardano, the network, but also which relate, right, on whatever scale, right? If you're thinking about, a DAO, which is just, I don't know, like 2 people or 3 people, thinking about that in the context of, okay, how do we design sustainable compensation at this scale, and maybe make it dynamic, at a sort of a bigger and broader scale. Thoughts, James, before we move
That's a
on?
great research agenda.
Yeah.
Those are all questions that we want to be looking at.
Scale.
I wrote proof of work there because I'm eager to just look at this other definition, right? The work that people do, and not just the mining rigs do.
Exactly. Yeah,
For
brings up conversation.
me, obviously the environmental impact of Bitcoin is always on my mind, but separate from that, this idea that once you own some Bitcoin, what rights and privileges does it come with, right? And not trying to be maximalist, I just find the responsibility of Cardano ownership more attractive than the one that comes with Bitcoin. And we actually get to choose to learn how to get our tokens off of Binance. We actually get to learn how to stake them, and over time we begin to understand what it means that we're voting with our stake for how the network is comprised. And that's going to be a choice that ADA holders continue to have and get to make over time. And right, the parameters of that decision will change as there's more pools, as the token value changes. But that underlying structure is there. So I think when we think about additional tokens that could be created to serve this or that purpose, I'm really excited to make sure that they have with them some rights and responsibilities that continue to kind of further whatever the goals of a DAO or a group of people might be.
Absolutely. Okay, so I was actually I was quite curious to hear Roberto's perspective on Aragon specifically, because it's a project which is has a lot of its roots in Spain. Um, and wait one sec, I cannot be able to read that. Okay, yeah. Don't worry about the latency, man. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, but obviously, yeah, as he said, he hasn't really been sort of following their progress. But either way, I think at some future point it would be interesting to understand, because obviously me not being part of the sort of Spanish communities, Spanish slash crypto community, I have a different experience of following the Aragon story that than Roberto would have. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, so now, okay, because of time, I would like us to actually jump into this particular, into this next section, which, yeah, is basically the call to action. Yeah, so we got to talking about how how to best, in a way, invite the community to actually participate in somewhat of an experiment, right? In trying to arrive in typical awesome decentralized and open source style, right? And yeah, so James, or shall I say, Gimbal Labs have put together something which we thought actually will make for a great kind of bookend to this conversation, where we take the opportunity to frame all these ideas that we've kind of nebulously touched on, to try and crystallize them in an ongoing interaction with the community. So yeah, I'll I'll hand it over to James to expand on the idea here.
Thanks, A. And hey, we got Quasar and Tavo and Steve Lockhart just showed up in the chat. And Steve, I was chatting with you on Discord about this yesterday. So yeah, we're excited to start rolling out this project. This is a research project. So what we have are a series of questions that we're trying to address. And with each of these questions, we make some assumptions, we have hypotheses, and then we ask for some deliverable, right? Something to happen. And so I want to start with the highest level assumption of this experiment that we're running, which is that the only way to build a DAO is to try to build a DAO. Okay. Exactly. And so anybody who agrees with that assumption is you're going to find collaborators here. With that in mind, it takes a bit of effort to start a project running, right? As we move into a distributed, autonomous world, what is the role of leadership? Who makes decisions about what snowballs to start rolling, right? And so we need to figure that out. And we recognize that Gimbal Labs aspires to be a DAO and is absolutely not one yet, right? We haven't built it yet. Yeah. And so we're calling on anybody who's been part of these conversations already or wants to get involved starting now to join us in some research where part of the deliverable is specific to a question, but the other part is just this high level learning by experience of what it's going to take to create the best possible DAO we can out of Gimbal Labs. And we hope that this research provides other people who want to do the same with a starting point, right? The work we do, the insights we have, and the mistakes we make will hopefully be of value to additional people moving forward. So I shared with you this initial assumption that the only way to build a DAO is to try to do it. And we have these two high-level guiding questions. And, if you're starting your own DAO, your initial guiding questions might be different from these ones, and that's okay. For Gimbal Labs, we start from one, okay, How are we going to build a DAO where things actually get done? And the backstory for this is I've had some of my favorite conversations of my entire life over the last 6 or 9 months, right? Jumping in, beginning to meet people, beginning to pick up all of our shovels, whatever they might be. But I'm also realizing that having really inspiring conversations is just step one. And it would be really easy to just keep having inspiring conversations for the next 20 years and wake up and be like, wait a minute, all those, what do we do? What came out of those conversations?
Exactly.
So we want to own it that DAOs are organically pretty nice places to have really inspiring conversations. That part, we've got that part going on pretty well. Now, how do we make sure that we are able to get things done? And then parallel to that is this second question. How can we support anyone who shows up to find their place, right? We all have different interests for wandering into this, new crypto space with new tools at our disposal and the ability to talk to anybody all over the world, right? We come to this with whatever initial interests we had. And then as we begin to learn, we recognize that there's all these other even more interesting questions that emerge. But at the end of the day, we all have a certain amount of time and certain talents from the experiences that we've had in our lives up to now. And we really do believe at Gimbal Labs that there's a place for everybody. We really do believe. And we believe it because we've already started to see it, that when people show up, they find a place to start contributing. One of my favorite things that's already happening in the Gimbal Labs Discord is people connecting with each other saying, hey, I need help with this. Anybody know how to do that? And somebody else will say, oh yeah, let's talk, right? And that's happening in Catalyst. So we know that communication is working at the Catalyst level, and it's happening on a smaller scale at Gimbal Labs. So what we propose is a series of experiments. What we'd like to do is run 2 experiments over the next 2 weeks, starting on this upcoming Monday. What's that day? So the 15th.
15th.
Right? So February 15th through the end of the following week would be our first experiment, 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, we want to ask 2 questions. And we've set out an agenda for the assumptions that we're making, the hypothesis we have, and what should be delivered for this. And we want to fund this work. We want to use part of the Catalyst funding we received as part of Fund 2 to compensate people for participating in this real-life actionable research. It's just like with Catalyst, it's not going to be enough to make a living yet. All right, but we're on the road there, and where I think symbolically is the most important thing here is to say yes, there is funding to compensate people for contributing to this work. So the 2 questions we have, one is about a shared content library. What we have so far is a lot of different people with different end goals and different projects they're working on. And we're beginning to see the value of autonomy, of having people being able to really stay autonomous in the work they're doing, right? But then they come for other sorts of support. How can you contribute the parts, or how can I get help for the parts that I don't know how to do on my own, right? What we're seeing is that as people have these conversations, we actually have the ability. Oh, that's so funny, Steve. Nice. That's great. I'll catch up with you. Don't worry. This guy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah.
So what we realized is that having some shared library to refer to, okay, of short form videos that express to the broadest possible audience some of the big ideas behind crypto and what problems it's solving, but also some of the new problems it raises, okay? And what we'd love to do is create a library of short videos that take people on a really quick journey, show them something new, and get them thinking about it. So that's one of the 2 projects. The other one is much more research based, and it's exactly what we've started talking about here on Proto today. Exactly, Tavo. Tavo, you're going to be on this group, okay? 2-minute videos. I do trust you. I'm terrible at it. You can see it happening right now. I'm just running my mouth, and so I need help saying things more succinctly. And so, Tavo, that's where you come in. So the other project is defining the token-based incentive structure for Gimbal Labs. Okay, we would like to, start from the guiding questions that are right here. We want to create a DAO where things get done. We want people to be able to find their place and contribute in the way they want to and generate as much value as possible. So how do we create a token-based incentive scheme for that? This is something that would be easy to centrally plan. A small group of people could read a whole bunch of books, write up a plan, and say, let's do it, right? That's not how we're doing it here. And that means that we might be moving just fast enough to break things a little bit, right? These experiments might not go perfectly, but that's also kind of the point. We want to learn from what can happen here. After this 2-week sprint, we're going to take 1 week to collect everything we learned and then launch another one with 2 more research questions drawn from everybody who's participating to continue this line of research. So how do you get involved? If you're already in the Gimbal Labs Discord, I'll be posting about that probably first thing tomorrow morning, East Coast time, to get ready to start this work next week. I just want to make sure to present it the right way. And we got a few more meetings coming up today. So I probably won't get to posting that today, but look for that first thing tomorrow morning. If you're not on the Gimbal Labs Discord yet, is it safe to put a Discord link in the YouTube comments?
I was just about to.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. We've got a spam bot running.
Yeah, so, and you can be able to revoke it anyway and create a new one. So
cool.
Yeah,
cool. All right. So yeah, that's the plan. I wanted to share just enough to make sure y'all know about this, and we're going to launch this work tomorrow. Please know that you're welcome. I cannot overstate how welcome everybody is here. Our goal is to figure out how to make you feel like you've got something to say here. So please show up and help us figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and if I could just actually add to that, I feel like what's important to understand here is, yeah, there's a little bit of ADA or Gimbal tokens that will go towards. Did you mention that part?
No, I said we have a budget. Yeah, and so you're gonna when we do get to the point of compensation, you'll get to choose between ADA or these nascent Gimbal tokens that, as you can see from project number 2 right here, defining exactly what those are is part of it, right? So if group number 2 comes up with a good enough incentive structure, people will be able to draw from there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like, so in conclusion, guys, thank you very much for watching. The idea here is to actually, have, for one, these 2 things are actually quite complementary, right? The content question, as well as just the incentive structure for Gimbal Labs specifically. Because in a way, it's like, okay, how do we communicate the best way to get people who are who have limited time, limited, diverse skill sets, right? A whole bunch of different things. So the idea is to take all this kind of unstructured data, messy data, make sense of it, and then as we move forward, the idea is to actually create interfaces to enable people to actually create DAOs themselves. But then first and foremost, we need to solve the human problem first, right? Understand, okay, what are the best sort of incentive structures, people have limited time, etc., etc. How do they, value what they want to, what skill they want to learn, right? How do they think of that compared to how they're actually being paid right now, right? How expensive is their time, right? And then do they see a bridge between learning that skill today and when they can actually be able to to get some value, monetary value, say, in actually executing that skill. So the
Ooh,
idea
that
is,
was a great preview of the kinds of conversations that are going to start on Monday. See?
yeah,
Good job,
yeah,
man.
exactly. Yeah, so guys, thank you for watching. The Catalyst town hall obviously starting now. Thank you, 6 people, for still actually for still being here, even 1 minute. Okay, 5 people. Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. Yeah, we'll see you next week, same time. And yeah, thanks, Gimbal Labs, James, Roberto, and Julie.
Can't thank you enough, eh? It's good
All
to
right,
be here.
cheers. See
Cheers.
y'all.